My grandfather left his legendary 1967 Mustang to whoever could fix it, and my siblings hired mechanics while I used his lessons. Grandpa Vincent was a legend in the car community. His 1967 Shelby GT500 wasn't just any Mustang, it was one of only 2,048 ever made, with the original 428 cubic inch Cobra jet engine. Experts valued it at somewhere between $350,000 and $450,000, depending on the day and the buyer. He'd spent 40 years restoring it, customizing it, making it his. Every car show, every meet, people would gather around that Wimbledon white beauty with the blue racing stripes and just stare. The engine note alone could make grown men cry. When he died last month, the whole community showed up for his funeral. But his actual family? That was a different story. My 3 siblings had barely seen him in years. They were too busy being successful to visit an old man in his garage. The lawyer's office felt too small for the 4 of us and our egos. My older brother Dalton flew in from Boston where he ran some hedge fund. My sister Raven came straight from closing $1 million real estate deal in Miami. My younger brother Quentin brought his business partner to discuss leveraging the inheritance for their tech startup. I came from my shift at Murphy's Auto Repair where I've worked as a mechanic for 6 years, still wearing my work clothes with oil stains on the knees. Your grandfather left very specific instructions, the lawyer said, pulling out a thick envelope. The 1967 Shelby GT500, along with his house and savings, will go to whichever grandchild can successfully restore it to its original condition within 30 days. Dalton laughed. Restore it? It's already restored. I've seen the photos online, that car is immaculate. The lawyer shook his head. 3 days before his death, your grandfather deliberately dismantled major components of the vehicle. He left it in pieces. The silence that followed was deafening. He what? Raven finally said. Why would he destroy his own car? The lawyer handed us each a folder. He left this explanation. A car is just metal and rubber unless you understand its soul. Whoever can put my girl back together the way she deserves will prove they learned what I tried to teach. Inside the folder were photos of the Mustang in its current state. The engine was completely disassembled, parts scattered across the garage floor. The transmission was in pieces. Custom components I'd never seen before were mixed in with original parts. Quentin was already on his phone. I'm calling Morrison's Classic Car Restoration. They're the best in the state. Dalton nodded. I'll wire them whatever they need. Money's not an issue here. Raven was texting frantically. I know a guy who specializes in Shelbys. He's expensive, but he's worked on cars worth over $1 million. I just stared at the photos, remembering Saturday mornings in that garage, Grandpa Vincent showing me how to listen to an engine, how to feel when something was right. There's one more condition, the lawyer added. You must do the work yourselves. No professional restoration companies. You can purchase parts and tools, but the actual restoration must be done by your own hands. My siblings' faces fell. Dalton set down his phone. I haven't touched a wrench since high school shop class. Quentin looked panicked. I don't even change my own oil. How am I supposed to rebuild an engine? Raven laughed nervously. This is insane. Dad knew none of us except Kai work with cars. The lawyer looked at me. Your grandfather suspected that might be the case. We met at Grandpa Vincent's house the next morning. The garage looked exactly like the photos, maybe worse in person. Parts everywhere, some labeled, some not. The Shelby's body sat on jack stands, stripped of its engine and transmission. Custom brackets and modified components were mixed in with original Shelby parts worth thousands each. Dalton arrived in a suit, clearly planning to leave soon. Okay, so where do we start? I walked around the car slowly, taking inventory. The engine block was on a stand in the corner, pistons removed, heads separated. The transmission was in a dozen pieces on the workbench. Every system had been carefully taken apart, but I noticed something my siblings didn't. Next to each major component was a small strip of masking tape with numbers written on it. 7/12/89, 3/15/91, 11/8/03, dates. What are those? Raven asked, noticing me staring. I don't know yet, I said honestly, but something tickled at my memory. Grandpa Vincent always said every part of a car tells a story if you know how to listen. Quentin was already on his laptop. I found a company that sells complete restoration manuals for 67 GT500s. $500 for the download. Dalton pulled out his credit card. Buy it. Buy everything we might need. By day 3, my siblings had spent over $40,000 on tools, parts, manuals, and consultation calls with experts who couldn't physically work on the car but could give advice. I'd spent $200 on basic supplies and was working with Grandpa's old tools. You're doing it wrong, Dalton said, watching me examine the engine block. The manual says to start with the cylinder heads. I shook my head. Grandpa didn't build this engine by the manual. He modified it. Raven rolled her eyes. He had a Shelby GT500. It's all original parts. That's what makes it valuable. I picked up one of the cylinder heads and showed her the custom work. See these ports? They've been hand-matched and polished. This isn't factory work. Grandpa spent years optimizing every component. Quentin was frustrated, staring at the transmission parts. None of these pieces match the diagram in the manual. There are extra gears and this weird custom housing. I came over and looked. That's because Grandpa built a custom close-ratio transmission. He told me about it. Said the factory top loader was good, but he wanted better. Dalton threw down his wrench. How are we supposed to rebuild something that doesn't exist in any manual? This is impossible. I looked at the dates on the masking tape again. 7/12/89. That was familiar. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos. There it was, a picture of young me, maybe 5 years old, standing next to Grandpa in this same garage. The date stamp read, July 12th, 1989. My first day in the garage. I checked another date, 3/15/91. I found a photo from March 15th, 1991. Me and Grandpa, both covered in grease, standing next to the Mustang's open hood. "What are you doing?" Raven asked as I frantically checked more dates. Each one corresponded to a Saturday I'd spent in this garage with Grandpa Vincent. Days my siblings had been too busy, too cool, too important to hang out with an old man in his car. 11/8/03, the day he taught me how to rebuild a carburetor. 6/22/08, the day we fabricated that custom transmission housing. 9/14/15, the day he showed me his hand-matched portwork. He left me a map, I whispered. Every major component, every custom piece, was marked with the date he'd taught me about it. My siblings couldn't see it because they'd never been here for those lessons. Dalton noticed my expression. "What map? What are you talking about?" I didn't answer. I just started pulling out my phone's photo albums, matching dates to parts, remembering conversations from years ago. "You're losing it," Quentin said. "The pressure's getting to you." But I was already moving faster, more confidently. The engine block marked 7/12/89. I remembered that day clearly now. Grandpa showing me the bore, explaining compression ratios in terms a 5-year-old could understand. He'd overbored the cylinders by .030 inches, something he'd never written down anywhere. I grabbed the pistons marked 3/15/91, forged internals, custom ordered, installed the day he let me help for the first time. I knew exactly which ones went where because I'd handed them to him while he explained every step. By day 7, my siblings were drowning. They'd rebuilt and torn down the same components 4 times each, following different manual instructions, nothing fitting right. "This is impossible," Raven said near tears. "Nothing works. The parts don't fit together." Dalton was on his phone constantly, paying experts $500 an hour to video call and try to diagnose problems they couldn't see properly. Quentin had given up and was sitting in the corner researching if they could contest the will. I'd made more progress in a week than they had because I wasn't following manuals. I was following memories. The custom engine mounts went in first, the ones Grandpa had fabricated from billet aluminum because the factory mounts flexed too much under torque. The transmission housing bolted up next, using the sequence he'd taught me. Tight but not too tight. Let the metal find its home. His words from 15 years ago guided my hands now. By day 14, my engine was assembled. The custom close ratio transmission was mated to it. The drive shaft was balanced and installed. My siblings were still arguing about cylinder head torque specs. "How are you doing this?" Dalton demanded, watching me work. "You're not even using the manual." I tapped my head. "My manual is up here, every Saturday for 20 years. Raven came over, her own engine scattered in pieces for the 5th time. "That's not fair. We didn't know we needed to memorize this stuff." I set down my wrench and looked at her. "You didn't know because you never showed up. Grandpa invited all of us, every single Saturday. You guys were always busy." Quentin scoffed. "We had lives, Kai. Careers. We couldn't spend every weekend in a garage." I pointed at the Mustang. "And now you can't rebuild a car. Funny how that works." By day 20, I was doing final adjustments. The engine was in, transmission connected, suspension rebuilt with the custom rates Grandpa preferred. My siblings had made progress by throwing money at the problem. Dalton had paid a machinist $15,000 to rebuild his cylinder heads to factory specs. Raven hired a specialist to balance her crankshaft. Quentin bought a complete rebuilt transmission instead of fixing the original. But they were all following factory specifications, building a stock GT500. They didn't understand that Grandpa's car had never been stock. Day 23, Raven's engine finally fired up. It sounded good, strong, exactly like a factory 67 Shelby should sound. She was crying with relief. "I did it. Oh my God, I actually did it." Dalton's engine started on day 25. Quentin's came alive on day 27. All 3 of their cars were running, drivable, restored to factory original condition. They looked at my car, still up on jack stands, final adjustments being made. "You're running out of time," Dalton said with poorly hidden satisfaction. "The deadline is in 3 days." I just smiled and kept working. Day 28, I dropped my car off the jack stands. Day 29, I did my first start. The engine note that filled the garage was different from my siblings' cars. Deeper, more aggressive. The custom cam profile Grandpa had designed giving it that distinctive lope at idle. My siblings noticed immediately. "That doesn't sound right," Quentin said. "Sounds like it has a bad cam." I revved it, and the garage rattled. 7,000 RPM, the custom valve train stable and smooth. "Sounds perfect," I said. Day 30, we met back at the lawyer's office. The Mustangs were parked outside in a row. 4 identical-looking white Shelbys with blue stripes. The lawyer came out with a clipboard. "Let's start with basic inspection." He checked Raven's car first. "Engine serial numbers match factory specs. Transmission is correct. Suspension geometry is original. Well done. He moved to Dalton's car. Same assessment. Factory correct restoration. Excellent work. Quentin's car passed the same inspection. All three of you have successfully restored the vehicles to factory original condition. Then he came to my car. He popped the hood, and his eyebrows went up. This engine has been modified. Dalton smiled. Told you. Kai screwed up. Grandpa wanted it restored to original condition. The lawyer pulled out another envelope, this one sealed with wax. Let me read the complete instruction. The car must be restored to the condition I intended. The way I built it. The way I taught one of you to build it. He looked at my engine. These are custom-forged pistons. Hand-matched ports on the heads. This isn't factory. I pointed to the transmission. Custom close-ratio gearing. He built it in 2008. The lawyer nodded slowly, cross-referencing something in his notes. He walked around the car, checking details my siblings had missed. Custom sway bars, modified steering geometry, one-off exhaust headers. Tell me about the cam, he said. I recited the specs from memory. Comp cams, custom grind, 242-248 duration, 618 lift, 110-degree lobe separation. He had it custom-made in 2003. Said the factory cam was lazy. The lawyer made notes. Then he asked about the suspension, the transmission gear ratios, the exhaust routing. Every answer I gave matched documentation he had in his folder. Documentation my siblings had never seen because they'd never been in the garage when Grandpa had made these modifications. The other three cars are beautiful, the lawyer finally said. They're factory-correct 1967 Shelby GT500s worth approximately $350,000 each in current condition. He gestured to my car. This car, with its documented custom modifications by Vincent Wakefield, proven provenance, and complete history, is worth substantially more to collectors. Easily $600,000, possibly $750,000 to the right buyer. My siblings' faces went white. But that's not why it wins, the lawyer continued. It wins because it's the car Vincent built, the car he wanted, not what some factory in Michigan thought a Mustang should be. He handed me the keys and another envelope. The house, the savings account, and all tools and equipment in the garage also go to Kai. Dalton exploded. This is bullshit. We followed the rules. We restored the cars. The lawyer shook his head. You restored 3 cars to factory specifications that Vincent had specifically modified away from. You undid his work. Raven was crying again, but angry tears now. How were we supposed to know? He never told us about the modifications. I opened the envelope and found a letter in Grandpa's handwriting. He did tell you. He invited you to the garage every Saturday for 20 years. I was the only one who showed up. The letter read, Kai, if you're reading this, you figured out my date system. Every part marked with a day you were here, learning, helping, being present. Your siblings spent their lives chasing money and success. You spent your Saturdays with an old man and his car. The Mustang is yours because you earned it. Not through money or connections, but through time and attention and actually giving a damn. The engine modifications I made in 2003, you were there handing me tools, asking questions. The transmission work in 2008, you helped fabricate the housing. Every custom piece has your fingerprints on it, literally and figuratively. Your siblings hired the best mechanics and spent a fortune restoring 3 cars. But they built strangers' cars. You built ours. Quentin grabbed the letter from my hands. This is manipulation. Elder abuse. He clearly had dementia. The lawyer cleared his throat. Vincent Wakefield was evaluated by 3 independent physicians in his final month. All confirmed he was of sound mind and body. This will is ironclad. Dalton's phone was already out. We're contesting this. No way this stands up in court. I folded the letter carefully. Go ahead. Contest it. Spend your money on lawyers. Raven stepped closer. You planned this. You isolated him from us. Made sure you were the only one he saw. The accusation stung because it was so backwards. I didn't isolate him. You isolated yourselves. Grandpa called you every week. Invited you to car shows, to dinner, to the garage. You were always too busy. Dalton sneered. Some of us had real careers, real responsibilities. I pointed at their perfect factory-spec Mustangs. And some of us had time for an old man who just wanted to share what he loved. But sure, your career was more important than knowing your grandfather. Quentin grabbed my arm. You don't deserve this. You're just a mechanic. We could have actually used this inheritance for something meaningful. I pulled free. Something meaningful? Like another investment property or funding your startup? Grandpa didn't want his legacy turned into a business deal. The lawyer intervened. This meeting is concluded. Kai, the title transfer will be processed this week. The rest of you have 30 days to clear any personal items from the property. My siblings left, already on their phones with lawyers, accountants, anyone who might help them contest the will. I stayed behind, looking at the 4 Mustangs, 3 perfect, valuable, factory-correct restorations, and 1 modified, customized, perfect representation of the man who built it. The lawyer handed me 1 more envelope. He asked me to give you this after they left. Inside was a photo. Me at age 8, standing on a milk crate so I could reach the engine bay, Grandpa's hand on my shoulder, both of us grinning. On the back, he'd written, "This is what inheritance really looks like. Not money or cars or property. Time, attention, love. Everything I taught you, everything we built together, that's what I'm leaving you. The car is just a reminder." I drove the Mustang home that night, the engine note echoing off buildings, the custom exhaust singing. It didn't sound like my siblings' cars because it wasn't supposed to. It sounded like every Saturday morning, every lesson, every hour spent in that garage. Over the next few weeks, my siblings filed their contest. They hired expensive lawyers who argued about testamentary capacity and undue influence. They painted me as a manipulator who'd taken advantage of an old man. The court date came 3 months later. My siblings showed up with their legal team. I showed up with a cardboard box. The judge asked me to present my defense. I opened the box. Inside were 20 years of photographs. Me and Grandpa in the garage, every Saturday. Me at age 5, holding a wrench bigger than my arm. Age 10, helping him paint the stripes. Age 15, rebuilding the carburetor. Age 20, fabricating custom brackets. Every major modification to the Mustang documented with me there, learning, helping. My siblings say I manipulated him. I told the judge, here's my manipulation. Showing up, being there, caring about something other than his money. I pulled out Grandpa's garage logbook. Every Saturday for 20 years logged. Times, projects, what we worked on. My name appeared 847 times. My siblings' names appeared a combined 14 times, all from before they turned 16. They stopped coming when they got too cool for an old man's hobby, I said. I never stopped. Not because I wanted his car, because I wanted to spend time with my grandfather. The judge looked through the documentation. Photos, receipts, the logbook, everything proving that I'd been the only constant presence in that garage. My siblings' lawyer argued that didn't prove anything about testamentary capacity or undue influence. The judge disagreed. This proves that Vincent Wakefield spent 20 years teaching one grandchild his craft while the others pursued their own interests. He left his work to the person who learned it. That's not manipulation. That's logic. Case dismissed. My siblings appealed. The appeals court upheld the decision. They threatened to appeal again, but their lawyers finally convinced them they were wasting money. The whole legal battle cost them over $200,000 combined. They could have each bought a nice car with that money. 6 months after Grandpa died, I got a call from Dalton. His voice was different, softer. I saw a photo on social media. You at a car show with the Mustang. 3rd place trophy. I'd won 3rd in the custom classics category, beaten only by 2 cars that had been featured in magazines. Yeah, I said cautiously. What about it? Dalton was quiet. I just realized I never actually saw the car when Grandpa was alive. I saw photos online, but I never came to see it in person. I didn't know what to say to that. I was thinking, he continued, maybe you could show me sometime. Explain what makes it special. I spent $75,000 building mine, and I don't even understand why yours is worth more. I told him he could come by on Saturday. He showed up at 9 a.m. early for him. I had the Mustang in my garage, hood up, doing routine maintenance. Dalton walked around it slowly. Show me what I missed. I spent 3 hours explaining every modification. The engine work that took Grandpa 5 years to perfect. The suspension geometry that made it handle like a modern car. The custom exhaust routing that gave it that distinctive sound. Dalton listened. Actually listened. For the first time in years. I was an idiot, he finally said. I could have learned this. He tried to teach me. I wiped oil off my hands. You weren't an idiot. You just chose a different path. Dalton shook his head. No, I was an idiot. I chose money over time with him. And now I have money and no memories. He looked at me. You have both. I showed him photos from my phone. Hundreds of them, spanning 2 decades. I have memories. The car is just metal and rubber. Raven called a week later. She'd sold her Mustang to a collector for $340,000. I'm donating half to an automotive education charity, she said. In Grandpa's name. It feels right. Quentin kept his car. He drives it sometimes to car shows, telling people about his grandfather who built legendary Mustangs. He never mentions that he barely knew him. A year after Grandpa died, I was invited to speak at a local car club. They wanted to hear about Vincent Wakefield and his famous GT500. I brought the photo of 8-year-old me on the milk crate. This car isn't worth $600,000 because of the parts, I told them. It's worth that because of the hours, the weekends, the conversations, the lessons. My grandfather could have left us money. He left something more valuable, proof that time is the only real inheritance. Someone in the audience raised their hand. What would you say to your siblings now? I thought about that. I'd say it's not too late to learn. The car is gone, but the lessons aren't. I learned how to value relationships over returns, how to build something with your hands instead of buying it, how to be present instead of important. The Mustang sits in my garage now, next to the Civic I drive to work every day. I take it out on Saturdays, usually to the same car shows Grandpa used to attend. People always gather around, asking questions about the modifications, the history, the value. I tell them it's worth exactly 847 Saturdays. They don't understand until I explain. Then they look at their own kids, their own parents, their own relationships, and something clicks. Last month, Dalton showed up at my garage again. I want to learn, he said. Really learn. About cars, about working with my hands, about whatever you're willing to teach. We pulled the valve covers off his factory-spec Mustang. First lesson, I told him. These are stock valve springs. Grandpa hated them, said they floated at high RPM. Let me show you why he replaced them. Dalton grabbed a notepad and started taking notes, just like I used to do, 2 decades ago, standing on that milk crate. The cycle continues, not with money or property or titles, but with time and attention and someone finally understanding what really matters. That's what Grandpa left me. Not a car worth $600,000, but knowledge that's priceless. Appreciate you watching this far. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe so you won't miss the next story.